Hey, and welcome to the Mountain Cat Guitars podcast, where we discuss all things guitar related. My name is Doug Meyer, owner of Mountain Cat Guitars, and I've been buying and selling guitars professionally for over 25 years. From boutique guitar and amp builders, vintage guitar dealers and experts, guitar repairmen and luthiers, retailers, manufacturers, and of course guitar players, we talk to the people who buy, sell, play, and of course obsess over the things we love most, guitars. Hi, and welcome to Mountain Cat Guitars podcast number 5, which is actually part 2 of our talk with our friend Nitebob, and we hope you enjoy the podcast. And you were doing front house sound at that point?
Front of house sound.
You started as the monitors.
No, I was always a front of house guy. You know, I went right from the working at the rehearsal place.
Right to front house sound with Aerosmith?
No, Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Oh, that's right. You told me that. Wow.
I did an arena, whatever. Yeah, I accelerated fast.
So you went from working at a rehearsal place to doing front of house sound.
I didn't do that much. They had a guy from New Zealand, Chris Young, who gave me the big break.
Right.
Who said, like, we need an extra guy, you know, and I learned a lot.
So you kind of learned how it
the guy who engineered the record was out there too.
Right.
But he was like chaotically English, and as the tour progressed, it was like he got more and more drunk.
I was gonna say, but
you know, I mean, like they actually had to wheel him out on a gurney. I was like, what's the point? Just lean him over there, you know? He was too drunk to mix, and Chris Young basically mixed these shows, you know, and every once in a while...
Massive shows, though, right?
What?
Massive shows.
Massive, man. Quadraphonic PA.
In for like a football stadium?
No, it was mostly...
it
was mostly arenas,
right.
Like 5 shows a week.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it was a lot of gear, 4 tractor trailers full of gear, one just for the drum set. It was made of stainless steel.
A tractor trailer for the drum set?
Just for the drum set.
Oh, no!
It was heavy.
I'm sure that's a whole podcast in itself.
That was their thing.
They wear capes and shit, right?
They had some crazy clothes, I'll tell you. You know, it's pretty funny.
That was arena rock at its finest.
You know, it was prog rock, you know, and I went right from prog rock.
Didn't like the organ move around or something?
Oh, no, they had a piano that would go up in the air and flip around. Right? It's a good story with that. Well, but
I'm sure.
Since it's not guitar based, we won't go into it.
It's a different
thing. The interesting point is I went right from Emerson, Lake and Palmer to the New York Dolls, right?
And that's arenas to not arenas, probably.
Well, you know, and I went to an Emerson, Lake Palmer show over at Roosevelt Stadium, right? And several people said to me, "We can't believe how your career has nosedived." I'm like, "What do you mean?" Yeah. And they go, "Well, you went from us to some crappy bands, you know." And I was like, "Crappy band?" I go, "I'll tell you something." I go, "I fly with the band, and all I do is mix." I go, "I don't stack no PA, right? I don't load trucks." And they were like, "You don't?" And I'm like, "No, I travel with the band. You know, show's over, I walk away." You know, and they were like, you know, it's like, wow. And so I guess that's not a nosedive. And I go, and to tell you the truth, I'm making more money than I would with you.
Right.
Right. So shut up.
And the music's
shut up, man.
And
then went from the Dolls to Aerosmith, and that's like a whole other 2-hour conversation. But the thing was, at one point, I really wanted to be in a band. After I left Aerosmith because things had just gotten to be too crazy, right? And I'd seen how bands nosedive. So I also thought, I'm like, at this point, I just turned 27. I better make my move to be in a band now, you know, before I'm too old.
Right.
Don't trust anybody over 30. You know?
Well, shit, I mean, at 27, you're still young.
Yeah,
You've already probably seen the whole world.
Yeah, I've been everywhere at that point.
Right.
You know,
you probably got to Japan with Aerosmith.
I've been to Japan, I've done Europe twice, you know, all this kind of jazz, right?
Well, that's the thing. If you want to be a player and then you wind up in a thing like that, you're watching people play.
Right, you learn a lot. Let me tell you. You learn what works and how things work and what, you know. I mean, you get to play through their gear.
Yeah, every night.
Right, in an arena. Not every night, but I mean, like you'd sometimes, you know, you'd play and you understand that playing an arena is kind of like body surfing, you know, that you're really caught up in this swirling acoustic nightmare, you know. And so, you know, I stepped off the road and I got into, you know, I formed this band. But of course I needed to work, right? So I wound up getting a job on 48th Street.
With Rich Friedman?
No, with Steve Friedman.
Right.
The second son of Mr. Pop Friedman, we used to call him, right? And he was, at that point, he had the little wee by.
Right.
and Dad had the big wee buy across the street.
Oh, there were two?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. It was big wee buy, little wee buy. We used to call it big wee buy, little wee buy, same family.
Right.
Right. And Steve was like, he was more musicianly than his dad, so he knew that, and I hipped him to like B.C. Rich, Charvel, and
All that stuff
Hamer.
that was coming in, right?
Right. And that stuff, it was like cutting, because we'd met those guys,
Right.
You meet, Paul Hamer and Joel Danzig because they're trying to sell you a V or a burst in Chicago, right? Or like, we're getting parts, we had bought the BC Rich thing. We knew they were working, we knew they were smoking, but it was still, there was no internet. It was just like kids go, that's a crazy guitar, but the music stores were a little bit, late to the party.
Hesitant to bring that stuff. Oh, it's not going to sell. I don't understand.
They were into their Gibson. Nothing is better than a Gibson. Fender guitar, So he was cutting edge with new stuff. Right. And I sold a lot of people their first BC Rich there.
I'm sure.
And I sold more Hamers than anybody in the United States.
Well, Hamer's actually being sold on 40th Street back then?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I thought that was just Chicago.
No, what it was is that when they made the Sunburst, right? The
Sunburst Explorers?
No, the Sunburst, it was the guitar called the Sunburst, which is a double cutaway like that with binding with a flaming maple top, right? And I would sell them for $5.95 without a case. Right, because case was like $75, right? But a double humbucking mahogany guitar with a flame maple top for $5.95, where if you went down the block to Manny's, a similar Les Paul was like $9.95. Right?
Half the price you're getting.
And really we were paying $400 for them, so there was a good
you're making money.
Good markup on them. So one year I sold over 100.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
And you're playing in a band, working on 48th Street.
Playing in a band, working on
the dream.
48th. It's even great because I you get into the tossing guitars around and stuff. You'd break your guitar over the weekend, bring it in on Monday, they glue it back together for you. You use it next weekend.
Nice. And what was the band?
I don't want to go into that, but there's a lot of bad memories. But I mean, we played at the show place a lot, opened for a lot of people. We were good. I thought we were really good, but it just it made me begin to think that like
bands are rough.
Bands are like this is
like five-way marriages that can get really weird.
This is problematic, and it's like I expected it to be bad when there was a lot of money involved, right? And some people were making way more money than the other people did. And you come in and like the same attitudes prevail in a your band.
Right.
You just at one point you go, I can't get away from this. I got to find some people I can work with, right?
Right. That's the hardest part.
So it was good, and like I pretty much knew how to buy and how to sell at that point,
Didn't you work at Matt Humanov's also?
That's later on. I was on 48th Street, 79, 80, right? Which are pivotal years, really, when you think about it, for BC Rich, for all
for everything. Well, that was right when everything was probably changing over to Charvels. And
that's when a good burst.
Van Halen probably came out right around then.
That was very interesting.
I'm sure. To be working in a guitar shop.
The rise of Van Halen, because same way, learn from my dad. Just go to the source, right? When we heard about this thing, I just went like, let's find this guy, Call up, some guy you were buying guitars from in Seattle and go, oh yeah, that's Floyd Rose. He's, I'll give you his number. So I told, I got Steve. I said, buy these. It's going to be huge, right? So he bought like a half a dozen. They were really expensive.
Sure.
And they didn't come with any instructions.
Right, I was going to say, who put them in?
Ken Parker.
Wow, he drilled the 2 holes in the headstock and all that shit.
Ken Parker was working repair upstairs at Little.
Is that right?
At Little Weebuy.
Wow.
Because he was an archtop builder, right? And it's sort of like all of a sudden, I don't care about archtops.
The Floyd Rose didn't come with instructions?
No, he had to figure it out, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was a weird contraption.
And he figured it out with my guitar, right?
No.
Which is pretty interesting too, because then at one point I was the only guy in New York City who had a Floyd Rose guitar.
Wow.
Right, and I paid for the Floyd Rose and the installation by renting it out.
Wow.
You have a Floyd Rose, and I'd have to show them how it worked.
Right, like this is how you break a string.
Wow, it's like they didn't have the fine tuners then,
Oh, interesting. Oh, that came later? So you just locked them and
you locked them in. You had to stretch those strings to death, you know. And I mean, listen, I used to do this thing, right? Hit an E chord, right? I go, give me that, you know, electric screwdriver, right? I take the 4 screws out, hold the guitar in 2 parts, right? Then put it back together, put the screws back in, hit a chord, and it's still in tune.
People are like, whoa.
People are like, how much?
It's impossible.
How much?
Wow.
I had guys bring in vintage instruments.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And I was like, don't do this.
So you know how many people I talked out of?
I know. You know, it's like, here's my 57 Telly. Can you route that for a Floyd Rose? I'm like, oh, man, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's like everybody humbuckering Strats.
It's going to cost so much money.
It was like the period where like everyone
just go buy a Strat.
Yeah, go buy a Mighty Mite body.
You know, just go, you know, just don't do it. And then people go, no!
I did it as a kid. You know, like when I was in high school, Van Halen was the thing.
Listen, in the back of my mind, all I was thinking about was that in the cellar with the zip strip and the seafoam green and black.
Yeah, we all did that.
Everybody does.
We rounded our bodies to fit in humbuckers with screwdrivers and mallets. You know,
so then of course, like retail, as you know, as anybody who has ever worked retail selling things to guitar players, can be mind-numbing and really annoying.
In the wrong situation, yeah. It's
in every listen, you know.
Sometimes I really enjoyed it at times, but ultimately it can be kind of brutal.
Here's the thing, right? That there was, you know, at that point in time, you really only had Guitar Player magazine and Guitar World had just come out, which was, you know,
the other magazine.
A little more gear-centric, very East Coast, as opposed to...
Here we go, I just read Guitar Player.
Guitar Player was very West
That was
Coast.
like, I would wait every month for my Guitar Player magazine.
Course.
And at that point, you know, in the 80s especially, it was Eddie Van Halen every month.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, he would give away little things and you'd be like...
But I'll say this, that retail in general can get to you. Dealing with the public in any way, shape, or form.
That's why I stopped. That's why I do a by appointment only business now, because I can't stand behind a counter anymore. And
you don't want to deal with tire kicking.
Or even it just became not fun. I loved it for years. I lived for it. I never took a day off ever. Like, we lived for Chelsea guitars.
It was great. You will look forward to going to work.
Yeah, I would go there on my day off because I didn't want to miss something cool.
Right.
You know, we all did. Like, Chelsea was one of those places where, you know, because Danny, you know, when Les initially, but Danny, he didn't run it like a business. He ran it like a clubhouse. You know, like
no, it was the hang. I mean, that's
where I met half the people I know. Like everyone went there with their coffee in the morning. You know, and you sold guitars. But
that went back to the '60s. That's where you went to learn.
To talk to other guitar guys.
To transfer,
overhear shit or you know, I turned on to records and you know, like Peter Green. Danny was a Peter Green freak. You had to listen to Peter Green.
You know, so that became. You know, I stayed there for 2 years, and then I went to work for ESP Guitars. Right, as a consultant.
They had ESP, what was the shop on 48th Street?
That didn't come till later.
That was ESP though.
Yeah, it was ESP. That didn't come till later. They originally had a floor in John Peden's building.
Oh, interesting.
In the mid-20s.
Right. That's where ESP was?
That's where ESP was in 81.
Wow.
82. At one point I was
a Japanese company, right?
I was the head of shipping. Right. I had one of those vacuum because parts became like a big deal, you know, and they were good on parts, you know. So I had one of these things that would, you know, you'd have this big square thing of ESP things, and you'd put, you know, knobs and a switch and a, you know, tip for, you know, bridge pieces and all. I had this big vacuum thing that would just like vacuum pack these things. Then you'd cut them and put them in a box and ship them off to. Right, but then of course, you know, we started vacuuming sandwiches and
of course anything. It's a wallet.
You know, sandwiches were good. I sent a guy in New Jersey, maybe Victor's House of Music. I sent him a vacuum packed sandwich. You know.
So, but then you went back on tour. You know.
Yeah, because you know it's. At that point in my life, I was, say, 32, 33, something like that. And I went back to Aerosmith.
Oh, that's right.
I went back to Aerosmith because they came to me and asked me to come back. And I felt nice coming. You know, I said, okay, I'll
go on tour again, yeah.
And that was the last days of Crespo and Dufay.
Right.
I did some stuff in '83, then '84. It was funny, we were just talking about this, that Valentine's Day, 1984. That's when Joe and Brad came to talk to the other three, right? And I remember being at soundcheck and seeing those guys come in, right? And Rick DeFay turns to Crespo and goes, "We better start looking for work."
Yeah, we're fucked.
You better start looking for work right now. You know, looks like we're out of a job.
Yeah, that's I guess as it should be.
So I spent some more time with them. I turned Joe on to the Hendrix guitar,
Right.
you know, and tried to help them out a little bit. And I've always been really gear centric, so I assimilate tons of information
Right.
about stuff. So someone says, "I want to do this," I go, "Well, we can do this, and
Right,
this."
because you could almost be a guitar consultant.
Yeah,
just
that's
in
what
the fact.
That brings
Well, that was when I started Mountain Cat. You were basically that for me. Like when I first started Mountain
I
Cat,
told them, go boutique, baby.
right,
You
and
know?
it just wound up happening for me, like by accident. You know, I was repping. I was always a vintage guitar guy. I
Right.
went in with watches. Like I sell vintage guitars in New York City for 20 years. And then when I opened my own little spot, I wanted to buy a appointment place. It was just going to be vintage because that's what I know how to
Right.
do. And then I was only repping one boutique guitar builder, Brian Monti, because he mostly restored old guitars for us.
right.
But he had his own guitars. And then I guess people thought when it started that it was going to be a boutique guitar shop, that I just hadn't listed the rest of the boutique builders yet. So the first person to call is Doug Cower. You know, like,
Right.
"Hey, I hear you're opening a boutique guitar shop." And I was like, yeah.
that's the
and then
way
he was
it
like, "Well,
is.
can I send you a couple guitars?" And I was like, "Send
Yeah.
me guitars, and I don't have to do." Yes, that you could do for sure. And then he was
He's
like, "Well, if you like
desperate to
my
sell
stuff,
them,
you
you
should
know?
call." Mike Podfin, he's a great builder. And that's how it all started. But I remember talking to you a lot at that period because I would show you the guitars and be like, "What do you think of this?" And you'd be like, "Well,
that open grain.
that was the first one. I didn't know." You're like, "What the fuck is going on here?" I was like,
You're
"What do you mean?"
asking
He's like,
$3,000 for a
"Right."
guitar that
And you-
doesn't have grain
and-
filler.
right, and you kept saying stuff like that. And I was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" Because I only tell old guitars. There was nothing to know about the mat on that level. You just had to know if they were original or not original.
Right.
And then I was like, "What do you mean by the grain filling?" Like I didn't know any. And you were super instrumental in that because you were like, "He's asking a lot of money, but this isn't a $5,000 guitar the way I'm seeing it."
Yeah,
because
the
of
finish
this. Because you'd seen boutique guitars from the
Well,
beginning.
you know what it is? You learn, it's like the time I spent on 48th Street, it was Ken Parker doing repair and Tucker Barrett, and both of those guys were luthiers, right, who, submitted to repair because they needed to pay the rent, I mean, Roger Sadowski, same thing. He comes from repair.
Right, all those guys.
Right.
Working at Dan Armstrong's shop or one of these shops. On
Right.
48th
I mean,
Street.
it became, guitar players love voodoo.
Right.
It's sort of like, this guy does the best fretwork.
Oh yeah, it's always a different one.
The Norio
scenario. When he came around, he's the best.
Yeah, it only takes a year to get your guitar
Right, he's real
back.
good.
But
But there was
Roger Sadowski,
Yeah.
$600 to do a fret job.
Yeah,
It's like,
okay.
I'll
must
just
be
buy
great.
another neck.
Yeah, that would always happen in New York. It'd be like, "Oh,
Right, but
this is
because
nothing,
everybody's
guy."
looking for the cutting edge.
And people were getting better.
Well, and you had all these working musicians, who are either in the jingle thing or in the record thing,
Yeah.
and they had to be, they wanted to
shit
cut a
had to be
song
right,
as
yeah.
fast as possible. They didn't want somebody going, your guitar is
Is
not
out of tune.
is out of tune.
Well, that happened to us when we were young and we first started doing records. And you had these guitars you loved, and you would show up and you'd start to play, and the guy would be like, "You can't use that guitar on this record." I'd be
Yeah,
like,
it's
"Why?"
like- 'cause when you
like,
hit-
it's not in tune. Like, I can't cut the record with that. You have to use my guitar.
Yeah.
It's set up properly. And you'd be like, "You really want to use your own guitar?"
Right.
But wait, I got another guitar I brought. And you'd be like, "Yeah, it's the same problem."
Yeah, 'cause you didn't know.
His guitar's set up properly. And
didn't know.
that's how I met Les at Chelsea. Because I bought a guitar right when I moved to New York, the day I moved to New York,
These
and
guys
it
are
needed
really
work.
bored.
And I met Les, and he knew how to make a guitar work right.
Yeah, it's just assimilated.
Right. I didn't know how to
knowledge,
do it.
information.
But still, you would get this guitars that wouldn't stay in tune.
The thing too is then same thing, like you asked about Matt Humanoff, right? There was a point where I went off the road again, right? And Matty called me up and he said, "Is it true that you sold 100 Hammers in 1 year?" I went,
Yeah.
"Yeah."
It's like, "Want to come to work for me?"
Want to come work for me?
Oh, now he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
He's a
Want
smart
to come
guy.
work for me?
He's like,
I'm
"Fuck yeah,
telling
anyone who
you,
could sell
man.
100 guitars in a year."
I sold a lot of American standards.
By the way, he was the first guy to have those.
Yeah.
I remember saying
Well, I mean, it was like, he'd become a Fender
dealer
dealer.
around that point, right? That was about the time I got to New York.
Yeah, that was like, I guess, late 80s, 86 into
Right.
87.
Right, I got to New York. I
You
mean,
know,
89.
until I got another gig, another touring gig. I would, I'd go in there and put 5 days in, 6 days in a week, and I had my own clientele too,
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
that's-
like where they come and, but and I could sell. I was good at selling,
I'm sure. Well, you know your shit. And you've been on tour.
and
like,
you
had
could
shit
always impress people. Wow, wow, this guy and this pickup and this and that. You should use that pedal.
Right. Well, then, if you want to go jump ahead at this point and start talking about like when I hooked and you started working for Steely Dan.
Right.
Obviously,
Okay.
which is where a lot of people know you from also.
Right. Yeah, I came in to do engineer some rehearsal demos for Walter Becker when he was working, when he was putting together the Circus Money album, his second solo album.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And we would, we chatted a lot, and he began to realize I knew a lot about a lot of guitar things, and his assimilation of guitar information probably had stopped somewhere in the 70s. Right, and he did have a guitar with a Floyd Rose, so I must admit, he loved the fine tuner. His were blocked; they wouldn't move. Right, but he just loved the fine tuner aspect of it, because he had very precise ear, And at the time, he consisted of Roger Sadowski guitar and basses.
Yeah, when I first met him, he just had those 3 or 4 Sadowski guitars.
Yeah.
They were Walter Becker models, I think, at that point.
Well, no, they were actually basic. Half of them were basic Sadowski, two single coils and a humbucker, right? And then eventually, farther down the line, he had his own model, which had 3 P90s, right? It said Walter Becker on the headstock, blah, blah, blah. And he was using Mesa Boogie, what were they called? Not Spitfire, something else.
Yeah, everybody was using those.
Lone Star.
Right.
So like
Everybody had those at that point.
Lone Star heads. And at the,
He was playing guitar in that band?
yeah, and when he was doing a solo album, he was playing bass.
Right.
But in Steely Dan, he was playing guitar.
Right.
And that was his guitar setup. And he said, I could use a guy like you, right? So I was hired to. They asked me to do 2006, but I turned them down because I had already something else in place. And they were like, "You're going to turn down Steely Dan?" I went, "Yeah." But I went the next year. I went and did it, right? And just like he started to want to, to broaden his palette of tones and instruments. Because I brought over one of my guitars or something, and he was like, "What is this?"
Your Les Paul?
I think I had a Florence Les Paul.
Right. That was the whole thing that started that whole thing.
Right.
We had to call Peter. And
Right. Florence Les Paul. Sell this to me. No.
No, I gotta have 10 of them.
And then it was like, it's like, and then he began to realize there was this, because he's not the kind of guy who reads the magazines, right? And it just perked his, because he didn't know there was this other world.
There's a whole underground thing of boutique
I mean, he
guitars,
knew
but-
about Grimes, who was an acoustic builder, right? And who built him a Strat. And he knew about the LA repair guys, but he wasn't really up to John Carruthers. Right, who would build you a neck for your Strat for $500, something like that. And so I began to, see some other things. He began to see and try things out. And that's what. And through you, he hooked up. He saw his first Hahn guitar.
Right. Well, that was the first thing I think you brought to him from me was a Hahn guitar.
Yeah, 2 of them actually.
It was Chiho Hahn, our buddy and amazing guitar builder, who's now in Newburgh.
Newburgh, right?
And doing amazing stuff.
Right. He bought that.
The first one was the Strat.
Fiesta Red Strat with a Brazilian rose with fingerboard and a mahogany Telecaster that was like candy apple red or something like that. And that just opened the floodgates.
Yeah, and then it started coming Fast and Furious,
Then it was the V's and the V's.
Well, those were just super years with him because he was. I always tell people, you and him really were like the champions of the boutique guitar movement.
You know what? I think it was. I kind of look at it more as that he was impressed at the level of quality that small builders were capable
Could be
of.
achieved. Well, the first ones were Chio's guitars, and then, then it was I forget what was next.
Probably
I think it was,
Monty's,
or it was maybe, I think it was Chuck Thornton.
It was actually the Cower Firebirds.
Right, the Coward Banshees started, right?
Yeah,
And
the
I had
Banshees,
the exclusive on the Banshees.
Yeah, he was like, "This is great,"
Yeah,
and it just
I remember bringing him
accelerated.
the Banshee, and Doug was so excited.
It was like
oh my
that,
God.
that Monty V.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. It was like, you're gonna play like a 58
Flying V, yeah.
It's
And that was my guitar.
yeah.
That was my personal guitar.
Yeah.
You guys came up to my place, and he was like, I want one of these. I was like, I'll have one built. He's like, no, I want this.
one. That was a very interesting aspect.
I was like, what? But that's my guitar. He's like, I'm just taking it. I was like,
That was
okay. What do you say? No.
That was an interesting aspect of Becker.
Yeah, he did not like to wait on
He was not a impatient guy.
There was no like,
it's
Billy,
what do you mean I can't buy that? How much?
He didn't even like ask. He was just kind of putting it in the car.
I'm
I was
taking
like,
this.
he was like, send it in.
Charge me more money.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Yeah. This is going in my car now. Okay, cool.
It was like he really.
But he used that guitar every night.
He played that guitar at every show.
Yeah.
After the day he
So
died.
I had more fun with him than it would have been with me. So
I mean, he really played that a lot.
It was a great sounding guitar. I remember going to the Steely Dan show. You got us tickets, and when he switched to that guitar and it came off the stage, we're like,
whoa!
You could clearly hear the tone in that thing. Like,
He goes, "What do you think of that V?" I go, "Will you give it to me? You have a lot of stuff. Can I have that V?"
yeah, he loved it. But then
Get your own V.
Then it was Chuck Thornton after that, because Chico said, "Oh, if he's liking my stuff, you should really get a guitar for Chuck Thornton and bring it down there." That was the funny one with Chuck, because I bring him the guitar and it was slamming,
Right.
And then he did the thing like he always does, like he'll. I would call you and say, is he taking those guitars? And he'd never make up his mind. So he goes, and you said, oh, he's not going to take that Thornton guitar. So I was like, all right, I'm going to come in to say tomorrow and I'll pick it up. So I go meet up with you guys and I'm talking to him. And he's like, oh, what's doing with this guitar? And I said, oh, Bob just pulled it out. I'm going to take it. You're not taking it. He's like,
what do you mean?
I'm not?
Yeah.
He's like, well, let me play it for a second. And he starts playing. He's like, I'm not buying this guitar. And I was like, that's... From what I gather, he's like, no, I am buying this guitar, like right now. So I drove all the way into the city to pick it up.
Send me an invoice.
Like, send me an invoice. All right, I'm on the way home. But happened a couple of times where he was like, oh, I'm not buying that guitar. And he'd be like, but if you went to take it back from him,
what?
He was like, no, it's not happening.
What do you expect from the guy who coined the frame gas?
Oh, yeah.
Gear acquisition syndrome.
He was all over it. But, everybody, then it was Adam from Satellite, once he discovered satellite amps.
He never knew somebody would
Have all this
build
cool shit.
build to order.
Yeah, and then Adam would come into town. We'd go see Walter, and he'd just sit. Me and you would sit over there, and he would talk to Adam. He'd be like, "Can you build me a this and this?" And Adam's writing it down, and then a few months later, they start showing up. These amazing amps. One of them was like super high wattage. Remember that?
300 watts. You got two of them. 300 watts. They were supposed to be bass amps.
Right.
That didn't stop him. And it's like, I'm like, what are you doing with 300 watt amps since you play most things on two? It's kind of like having a
these
Ferrari.
These could come in handy.
And you're just like, you never get out of first gear.
Yeah, and then it was
don't tell me what.
Yeah,
to
but it was
do.
always so much fun with him.
It was.
Then it was the thing. You guys would tour. And we would just set up oh, you're going to be in Canada? Well, we'll have Brian Monty come down with some guitars.
That was an experience.
And then you go, Chuck Thornton, you're in Maine, Chuck Thornton's coming with guitars.
Chuck Thornton would come down, he'd bring us a big tin of maple syrup. Right. Brian Monty, he'd be lit by the time he got down there.
But he loved meeting the people who built these things.
Was like...
He wanted to connect on that level.
Yeah. He wanted to ask them questions.
Yeah.
Can you do this?
And he so appreciated it.
Yeah,
he didn't have to be, he was...
LSL guitars, he was a big fan of theirs,
Yeah, and he had everything. Like Ian Anderson guitars, every time you go every time we go down there, you're like, check this out.
Oh, Ian Anderson, that's right. He was a
beautiful guitar, I never saw him before.
Fan of Ian Anderson, He had, variety, he just...
But he would play it all. You'd go on YouTube to see what he was playing. That's how I used to find out if I was getting paid. You would say, well, if he plays it at a gig, you're getting paid. Yeah. So I'd go on YouTube to see, oh, he played the guitar.
What are we doing? What are we doing? Am I paying for, are you buying this or not?
Right, well, that was always the thing with him because he couldn't make up his mind. That he
it was like Han bought him 8 guitars and he couldn't make up his mind, so he bought all 8. I was like, great for him.
Yeah. Remember, I brought him the wrong guitar once.
I switched them in the case. I had a blue and two Han guitars, and I brought him the wrong one. And I felt so bad. I drove right back in the next morning and brought him the other one. And then he brought the one I brought him by mistake.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll just take them both. Fuck it.
Of course he did.
He was great that way. You know, like.
Listen, he really appreciated craftsmanship. He appreciated being able to talk to the people who, and this was really driven by, he was at SIR in New York City, right? And there was a Fender rep there, and he showed him this Esquire. And Becker was like, I want to buy it. Send me an invoice, right? So the rep talks to Fender, and Fender goes, no, we're not selling that, right? And I'm like, we don't want it for free. We want to buy it. Just tell me what it is. And they go, well, that's whatever our endorser, guitars for TV shows, and it'll mess up our inventory. And I'm like, what?
What?
And this went on like for a couple of weeks. He got really mad.
Yeah, he wasn't the kind of guy you said no to.
Yeah.
Like
it was just like, I don't care. 5,000, I'll pay. And I'm like,
yeah.
So that really, the fact that he could get a Chio Han on the phone.
Right.
That he could talk to.
Show driving to see. I'm going to go see Walter.
I could get him, Ian Anderson on the phone. I could even get him, the mysterious Peter Florence.
Right. I remember you calling me saying like, hey, could you get Peter on the phone? Like, I got an issue here. Like, I was like, yeah, I'll call Peter. But then but a lot of those things, he would call me out of the blue. He'd be like, I'm on your website right now.
Yeah. Tell me about this.
How is this guitar? I'd be like, yeah, it's pretty sweet. He's like, can you bring it in? Sure. I'd just go ahead and drop off the guitars
it wasn't going home.
Yeah, I'd drive in, drop the guitars off with you, and he could take his time and play around with them, and then the more builders, he would say, oh, are those good? Can you bring one in? And then people started knowing I had this connection with him through you.
Right.
And people were like, oh, can you take one of my guitars to Walter Becker? Sure. I'd be like, well, if Bob says it's cool, and he's interested in it.
Those guitars were fabulous.
Beautiful guitars, right? He bought an Avi Shabbat guitar.
He got a Shabbat. He got a
Red Rocket.
Red Rocket.
Right. I remember. Avi Shabbat sent me a guitar. Yeah, and then people just were like, "Oh, can you get this guitar to Walter?" And I'd be like, "Well, if he's interested in it, the thing you always had to tell him was like,
they left."
Is like, he wasn't good at making up his mind.
No, he was not good at making up his mind.
And you'd be the conduit for all these people, everyone like calling Nitebob, like, is Walter buying that guitar? And you're like, I don't know. I'll ask him. And
it went on to, we bought a lot of stuff from Earthquaker. Right, in Akron. So you play Akron, they'd come down, they'd bring a bucket of pedals, buy all those, and he liked, being able to pick the brains of the builders.
Right, that you seem to have the best time with, really connecting.
Dr. Z.
Right.
That was,
you
when in Cleveland, get Z on the phone.
All right, you got a bunch of those.
We're in Delaware, get Scott from Zex Coil.
Right. But that's a lot more fun than, just going to a store and buying a guitar from a company.
Yeah, well, he did that too,
you guys had Fender guitars.
We'd be in Oklahoma, and he goes, get a car, I'm going to Guitar Center. I'm like, for what? Because you never know. It's like he accidentally bought a wah-wah pedal at a Guitar Center once, just because it was on the counter, and then he started stacking up stuff.
With his shit.
Right, and then you come back.
What the fuck is
back
this?
With 2 bags of pedals. Right, and we're getting him out. And I go, you bought a wah-wah? He goes, no, I didn't. I go, it's in the bag and it's on your list. And he went, I guess I bought a wah-wah. It's like he doesn't do wah-wah.
No, I don't think I've ever seen
No, not at all. His balance was not so good, and so doing a wah-wah. It's like Dave Rule would have been doing it on the side of the stage.
That's true. So in each podcast we do, this was actually Melissa's idea, my wife. I ask everybody
5 questions.
Shoot. Which some of them you wind up covering anyway.
Well, I can recover them then.
Right. So, I think we got to this one. What were you doing before you were in the guitar business? Did you have any other jobs before you got a proper guitar?
I worked in the post office.
Yes, everyone comes up with this weird job.
Went to school. Post office was a good gig.
Well, you started pretty young. You didn't have another career and then switch to this.
No. I mean, I was playing in bands, working, and I got this gig at the post office.
Right.
This really unusual program where you could work 4 hours because they didn't want you to exceed 20 hours.
But then they got to get in a union and all this.
Well,
shit,
then
probably.
it was like it's like let's get young people in the post
Right,
office kind of thing. And this
interesting,
went on for a good year and a
Yeah,
half.
it's probably cool.
Right, but that other than that, it's like I went right from the post office to working the rehearsal, playing in bands.
Right.
I mean, like there's bands. Listen, in the '60s, you can make money playing in
Playing
in a
dances
band. They're
or
playing
something.
dances.
Yeah,
I
it'd be
explained this to someone else. That it was like, if you had a band that could keep kids dancing.
Right, play Rolling Stone songs.
Playing anything from Tamla Motown to Sly and the Family Stone,
They can make
because the
money.
Catholic schools really like that. Because if they were dancing, they weren't making out in the corner.
Yeah, right.
So,
Visible.
so if you had a band that could play 3 sets of dancey stuff, and we did, my band did, and we'd sneak in the occasional Cream song and stuff like that, it's for us. And what the Catholic schools would do, they charge $1 or $2 to get in. And if you could, they would just give you the door.
Wow.
Right. So
You
like
make a
when
few
you played,
$100s, yeah.
when you played St. Peter's Prep or played like in a gym,
Right.
and if people liked your band, and a Saturday night, you could easily make $500.
Wow. Yeah, it's big money.
And that's 60s. That's 60s.
Yeah, you hear about people making their living doing that.
And if you played, I mean, at one point, like if you played Friday and Saturday, you could conceivably come home with $200+
Right. Back then it was big money.
$250. Matter of fact,
Rent was probably $50.
my father said to me, he goes, "How much money do you make this weekend?" I said, $250. And he goes, "That's more money than I made after taxes working on the lunar landing module."
Oh, shit.
I said, maybe this music
What's wrong
thing,
with this?
maybe this music thing is not so bad.
That's crazy. Here's a cool question. What are you listening to these days?
That is interesting. Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown.
Oh, you told me about that.
Right? Very, very good. The other guitar player in his band is Brad Whitford's son,
Oh,
Graham
lives
Whitford.
in Nashville.
Well, he lives in Nashville now, but he grew up around the corner from me,
In the city?
in the city.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I used to see him.
Yeah, I know
and
you were
his-
tight with him.
And his younger brother, Harrison.
Right, he used to come in 30th Street a lot.
Right, who is also now turned into he used to play like Jeff Beck.
Right.
But then he accelerated past that. Now he's an insanely good songwriter.
Oh.
You should go
He's a very
listen.
nice guy.
You can listen to some clips on Amazon. Harrison Whitford.
Yeah, I remember he used to come in with Brad. You know,
Yeah.
when I was at 30th Street, they were buying Klon
Tyler,
Centaurs.
honestly, I listened to Blackberry Smoke.
I like that guy.
I think they're good. I always listen to, Government Mule.
Yeah, always
What I mean, it seems like I'm immersed in this Nashville Southern rock thing, but it's not. I listen to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, well, you go out and see a lot of music.
I was cranking, the Professionals, which is Paul Cook from the Sex Pistols
Right.
band, right? I'm a big fan of Ginger Wildheart and all his kind of stuff, I've been mixing front of house and doing production for Ace Frehley for like the last 10 years, right? And I will crank, I get excited, when you put on Detroit Rock City, I'm in my 60s, right? And it's still, you go like, get up,
Oh, yeah, I grew up on Kiss. Yeah, that was my
I'll
first
crank
band.
some Aerosmith. I've been listening to Joe Perry's solo record.
It's good?
It's really
Haven't heard.
good. He's got Terry Reid singing on it.
Oh, wow.
He's got David Johansen singing on it.
Oh, that's good.
He's got Robin Zander singing on it, right? He's got Chris Robinson.
Oh, that's right.
We'll talk about that when we get off camera. And who else? Gary Sharon
Oh, he's got everything.
from Extreme,
Right.
who did a great. I'd never met him. I'd seen Extreme like once, and who was a very, very wonderful guy. And and I went out to the record release because I'm like, I worked with Johansson, I worked with Robin Zander,
Right.
right? I wanted to be able to tell Terry Reid that he's amazing,
Yeah,
and so I flew out to LA just to go do that, So I've been listening to that a lot.
Cool. All right, here's an interesting. What would you be doing if you weren't doing this?
If I wasn't doing this, I'd be retired. I'd be sitting on
if your life didn't work out, if you didn't go into the music business, what,
If I didn't go into
what
that's
could
a
you have
really-
possibly been doing?
I don't know.
Some people have an obvious answer. Like one of my friends, like, I don't own a restaurant.
I don't think so. I think that
I don't have an alternative.
I think I would have gone.
honestly.
I would have.
just got whatever job.
At one point, I did some work for Fender. I did some corporate consulting for Korg, Marshall, for Fender, ESP.
Right.
And I was asked if I wanted to work for Fender, but it entailed moving to Scottsdale, Arizona, right? And also, it was like they wouldn't pay moving expenses, they wouldn't pay for a car, and I would be losing money.
I couldn't see you in Arizona.
Compared to the touring thing, right? So it's like that's not going to work, you know. And I don't know, you know. I mean, I could have, you know, proceeded into that.
Right.
Into the vintage guitar. I could have, you know, proceeded into vintage guitar.
Yeah, that's still roughly the same.
You know, just the retail goofy shit, you know. Right. And if I wasn't doing the tour, I'm like now, I'm very picky about what I do.
Yeah, you don't seem to tour as much.
And you know, you get to the point of where, like, you know, the time of me spending 2 years on the road with a band, that's gone.
Yeah,
I just don't. You know, what am I going to do, Bruno Mars?
Right.
You know, it's not. A good friend of mine is mixing Bruno Mars, so I'm sure he'll buy a house after that. You know, but
that's grueling work.
Well, it's not even grueling work, but you know, it's just like there's more I want. I've done that, been there, done that.
Right.
I'm now celebrating 45 years in show business.
Wow.
Right, so it makes me really old, and you know,
not really.
I still enjoy a good show. I really do. I saw J.D. Salzer last night.
Yeah, you're one of the first people. People I know who would go see local New York bands. You mixed my band one night at Don Hill's. Like,
absolutely.
I just bumped into you, and I was like, "Would you mix my band?" You're like, "Sure." What are you playing? I was like, "I'm on next." And they're like, "Why does it sound so good?" I'm like, "Oh, my friends with you know."
I gotta tell you, there's this guy Mark Uselli, right? He used to mix Lou Reed live. He has the greatest appetite for live music and music in general of anybody I've met in the last 10 years. He works at East Side Sound. He's a very good recording engineer. I go, hey, what are you doing? He goes, I'm mixing a U2 single. What are you doing tomorrow? I'm working on this project for Hal Wilner. I'm like, wow, that's big. And I go, what are you doing later? He goes, I'm going to mix some band, some John Zorn.
Right.
I'm mixing John Zorn, you know, with 10 cellos and out-of-tune electric guitars.
Yeah, some people just can't get enough of it. You know.
I get it. You know, I
but you were always like that. You know, you were always going to see local bands, support local music.
Nothing beats live music.
Yeah,
nothing.
But you would figure, oh, he's been on the road forever. You know, it's like, you know, he's not going to go out and see a band.
It gets hard to get you off the couch sometimes. You know, to go
see local. But you can't complain if there aren't great local bands and local bars if you don't go.
See, I have kids who are, you know, people. Well, I don't have kids, but I mean, I meet people who are 20, 30 years younger than me, and I'm always telling them, you see something you think is exciting, send me a message, you know? And if I, you know, in the internet age, if you can find out a lot of stuff really fast, you know, and if I hear something that I think is special, I'll go.
Yeah,
I'll pay to get in. I don't have to put me on the list.
No, there's still that thing. You know, it's still as exciting as it ever was.
Next question, please.
Here is an interesting one. What is one thing most people don't know about you?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
And none of these you have to answer, but
let me think about that.
I got some interesting answers from some other people. You know, I was like, really?
My partner in the loft is a serious chef.
Annie.
Yeah, and I'm her prep cook.
I can see that. I've had those berries.
I really.
She could cook.
It was funny. I talked to Anthony Bourdain, right? And I said, he was like, rock and roll, blah, blah, blah. I go, I watch your show. And I go, when I'm on tour, I just have the Food Network on.
He's like,
right? He was like, what? And I go, like,
I like
know.
Food.
I go, listen, you know, my pal Dave Rule, you know, spectacular guitar tech for
everybody.
Neil Young, Bon Jovi, you know, Walter Becker, blah, blah, blah. I go, you know, he's a chef, and he inherited all his mom's recipes, which are really good, you know. He even has that like chef jacket, you know, that says Chef Dave on it.
Wow.
You know? I go, I know how to chop. I know how to prepare. Right. I know how to hold, you know, I appreciate a good knife.
Right.
You know, I appreciate cutlery. And I said, that's, you know, kind of all of these guys, you know, listen, man, you're on the road. You know, you get to appreciate a good thing. It used to be drugs, now it's good food.
That's what happens as you get older.
You know? and then when you get home, it's like the last thing you want to do is get out and have somebody else touching your food. Right. So you learn how to process.
It's funny because two other people, and this is only the fourth podcast. Two of them said they would have a restaurant.
Yeah, I don't think I do that because there's.
But just that they love to cook. You know, they didn't do it.
I love to cook.
But,
You know, I like.
So
I
it's
like
just
cooking,
something with people who
you
do
know.
this and cooking. I like cooking. I'm not good. I like cooking for myself.
I'm good at chopping the stuff up. I'm not
Right.
so good at actually cooking it.
Right.
You know,
Well,
it's like
you
there's.
got Annie around, so you don't have to.
You know, I mean, it's sort of like she's got a lot more years experience than me.
Yeah, she's really.
But I do like, I'm like the chopping guy. You know, it's like you need garlic chopped, I'm your man. You know, I'm good
to
at
know.
all. Onions, I'm your
A lot
guy.
of people probably did not know that.
No, and it's like I'm like the last time I went to Japan, all I was doing was buying Japanese cutlery.
Cutlery is
you
supposed
know?
to be killer.
You know, samurai sword. Chef knife. You know?
And here's
Hakao.
the last one.
Yeah.
What's on the horizon for Nitebob?
That's an interesting question. In a way, I'm looking for like one last big one. I mean, I'd love to do a Jimmy Page tour.
Right.
Now, I came close to it with I did this Paul Rogers tour backed up by.
Oh, you went to England, did the Royal Albert Hall?
Yeah, Royal Albert Hall, and got into and threatened Robert Plant. That was really like a career high point, and. He was backed up by all these musicians who made all these Memphis R&B records, Alan Green, and for Royal Studios, right? So he got all those cats. He made a record with them in that studio, right? And then we went out to tour it, right? And we did a show for iHeartRadio, did a show at Town Hall, did a show at the Grammy Museum, flew to London, did the Royal Albert Hall, and then did later with Jules Holland. Right, and then the record just didn't pop, which is unfortunate, and so he went back to being Paul Rogers and doing an occasional Bad Company and stuff like that. And but I really thought, I mean, if that had turned into like a couple, a global thing, let's go to Japan, let's do 20 shows in the United States, let's do England, Germany, Scandinavia. I could have easily pulled the plug on touring.
Right.
Just because they go, where do you go from there? I've been lucky, man. I mean, it's like I've worked with Ian Hunter, who's in his mid-70s and still a spectacular songwriter and stuff like that.
He did a lot of touring with Walter.
Did Steely Dan stuff.
That was pretty hardcore tour.
I'll tell you a funny story. Right, Paul McCartney came to a Steely Dan show in London, and I was assigned, to meet him and take care of him and all this kind of jazz, right? It was kind of interesting because his management said over how he likes his margarita and all this. And this was at the height of his divorce thing with that one-legged girl.
Right.
Right. So I didn't know what I was going to get. He came. He was a lovely guy.
That's what everyone said.
I got I said, you can watch from the side and get you your own monitor mix if you want, whatever you want. I can make it happen. He goes, no, he wanted to sit out in the audience, right? So, lights go down, you sweep him out to the audience, put him in a nice seat, right? He air drummed through the entire show, right? And then towards the end of the show, I go let's go now, right? And Walter and Donald said to me, they go, as soon as you come off stage, bring him in the dressing room. So, side of the stage, watching the encore, they go in. I take them backstage. I go, they'd love to see you right now. And he goes, no, we got to give them 10 minutes. I go, no, they don't really break a sweat. Becker doesn't sweat at all on stage. They don't need to chill. They want to meet you. No, we'll give them 10 minutes. I'm like, okay.
Very nice of him.
I'm like, okay. So who's going to fight with Paul McCartney? Right. And I was wearing a New York Dolls T-shirt. And he goes, New York Dolls. I go, yeah, I cut my teeth in New York City on the New York Dolls, and it was the first time that I really saw a band go from local to global. Right. He goes, do you listen to them at home? I go, when I want to feel 1972, 1973, I'll pop on that record. Right. And all of a sudden, 22 years old. I love. They were my first real. Watch them rise kind of band. And he goes, do you listen to Steely Dan at home? I went, no. And he goes, why? I go, to be honest, I prefer this version, which is, the current Steely Dan, as to, the records. The records sound stiff to me.
Right. Well, yeah.
Oh, Becker would hate that. Right now, my keys are disappearing, But I think he would, the rhythm things. It's a different concept now.
Right.
But it was good fun.
It was great to us.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do it for us.
Okay.
So
How long was this? I wanted to give them something to do, so they could edit that part out.
So I just wanted to thank you for coming.
Hey, anytime, man. It's always a pleasure hanging.
And thank you all for watching or listening out there. And we will see you on the next one.
Right
Thank
on.
you.